Welcome back to the reality show life. Starting over. Welcome back to the reality show Life Coach podcast. Today is another special episode. I did one of these a couple weeks ago where I don't talk about Survivor, and I'm actually not going to talk about Golden Bachelor or any other reality TV show. I also don't have a guest today. I'm actually going to share with you the weird story about how I got into reality TV in the first place. Um, but before we get going, if we haven't met before, my name is Lynn Grogan. I am a certified life coach. I have been coaching for, I think, just over 6 years now professionally. And I offer two aspects of my business. I do general life coaching. So, if you're somebody that just wants help with lots of different aspects of your life and you have a hard time choosing when it comes to coaching and you just want to feel better in general, I can help you with that. And I also love to help people who are pivoting in their life, maybe making a major career change from one thing to another, or making a lifestyle change, and especially from the conventional to something that would be deemed unconventional, unusual for what you have been doing. I love helping people with that. So, as I have mentioned in the intro, today is story time day. I'm going to share a weird story about how I got into reality TV. And it goes actually back to my early years. I am 42. I'll be 43 in December. So we're going to be talking about my teenage years, those precious years. And I promise this will all connect back to reality TV. So, story time. When I was growing up, my parents let me know, like, hey, we fully support what you want to do after high school, but we just wanted to let you know we are not planning to pay for college. So if you do want to go to college, we're fine either way if you do. You're going to pay for that yourself. So I knew that from a very early age. It wasn't a surprise. And it was the same thing for myself and my brother and my sister. And, this was pretty dissimilar to most of my classmates. Most of my classmates had parents who were very involved in their schooling, expected they were going to go to college. Most of them, I think, most of their parents were probably planning to fund college or in small, fund some of college, and were pretty invested in that process. So my situation there was a little bit different. And so as we were approaching, sophomore, junior, senior year, obviously college was top of mind for most of us. And for me, like I said, it was a little bit different because it wasn't for most of my friends, should I go or not? It was, where should I go and what do I need to get into that school? So I had this major life decision there of like, should I even go in general? I thought I would. Again, everybody around me was doing it, so it was a popular thing to do. But then I had like so much anxiety of, well, where should I go? If I go, I should probably know what I should do ahead of time. What should I major in? Which drama central? How am I going to pay for it? And I think the biggest thing for me, though, and the thing I didn't voice to anybody else around me was, what if I don't get into college if I apply? And what if I'm not good enough? And I think this was the prominent one for me for several years. And I guess I just thought I was the only one feeling this way. And as we do when we feel like we're the only one feeling this way, sometimes we can just like isolate to ourselves, not share with anybody else. And that was what I was going through. So to anybody who was having a conversation with me, I would share those first things. Oh my gosh, I don't know where I should go, if I should go, what should I major in, all those things. But inside I was like so anxious about like, am I good enough? So that was weighing on my mind. And as we approached, times to go like apply for colleges, my stepmom was super supportive. She took me around on lots of college tours to see what was out there. And at the end of the day, I didn't end up applying anywhere. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to take a semester off to see what I want to do. So, but again, subtext, it was really like, I'm afraid that if I applied anywhere, nobody would accept me. And then what? So, as all of my friends were leaving for college in the fall, I'm working at the local Applebee's. I'm not doing much of anything. And I am like, got this great idea, probably saw a newspaper ad or TV ad somewhere, that I was going to do this medical study. It was 3 weeks long, and paid $4,000. So in-house, 3 weeks long, $4,000, a lot of money then. And actually, for a lot of us, that's a lot of money now. And I was like, okay, I can earn some money for college and, in a very short period of time, and maybe go in January or, the following fall, that kind of thing. And I didn't really know what to expect. When you go in for these studies, they have you meet, or at least at the time, they had you meet in person. They do a bunch of testing on you to make sure that you're, healthy human being. And, you don't meet any of the other people that you're going to be on the study with. It's very much you go in like a doctor's appointment and they test things on you. So I was accepted, and this was a very interesting experience. So again, all my friends are going to college. I'm like, bye, see you later. I'm going to do this medical study. It was local. It was, maybe 20 minutes from my house. But wow, this was like the first time I was exposed to people who were very different from me. Many people from different walks of life, different ages, race, income, ways of looking at the world, religions. I grew up small town Wisconsin, and it was mostly white. I was mostly interacting with people my own age or their parents or grandparents. So this was eye-opening from the get-go, and I wasn't expecting it at all. And I think this was also the first time where I was just treated differently. Going through school, I wouldn't say we were treated like special snowflakes, but you definitely felt special in social settings. And in this context of this medical study, we were being tested. So the first priority of the staff there was obviously make sure that we were following all the rules of the study to the letter. But it was the first time I'd ever experienced somebody kind of looking at me with disdain. Here we are, people who are using our bodies to make money, right? That there's just kind of a stigma socially about doing that in different ways, shape, or form. And I had never experienced that before. So that was pretty surprising to me. And then the study itself was also interesting. I'm pretty sure that the building that we were staying in was like maybe a former psych ward. So it was like, I think there was maybe like 48 of us, and there was like women's side of the hall, men's side. I think it was partitioned like that, or it was possible it was also, we were like split into a red team and a blue team. So there might have been a red side, blue side, and then only women in one, in sleeping quarters, and like only men in sleeping quarters. And there was like 4 of us to a room. This was pretty much pre-internet. I think dial-up existed at the time, but in the study location, not high tech at all. I think they were just using whatever they could find. So it was, no internet, no cell phones. I think there was a payphone in the hall. There was TV, but only in the communal room. So it wasn't like you could go off to your room and just watch TV quietly by yourself. So incredibly boring, like no stimulation other than the other people you were there with. And then they had like books and puzzles and stuff, but for 3 weeks, like that gets old pretty fast. So mostly you just have these people from very different walks of life hanging out with each other, being shuffled from room to room to room. So for those of you who are interested, the study itself was for the medical study, they were testing the compatibility of 2 drugs. I think one was for high blood pressure, one was for cholesterol. And so, when they give you the meds, they want to observe you for a certain length of time. They need to take your blood at a certain time. They need to take, multiple draws of blood on certain days. And so they really did need to observe us. So we were often shoved into one big room together with one TV. And I don't know if you've ever tried to figure out amongst 48 people, one show to watch. But it's, entertaining. I think eventually, after many, many arguments, the staff was probably like, fine, we're just going to put on like Wheel of Fortune and you guys can deal with it. But because it was so boring and because things were highly structured, things like what we were eating and when we were eating became very important. Um, we were timed as to when we would actually get to eat. So, you'd be like just watching the clock, going, "Oh my God, is it 12:48 yet? Do I get to eat?" When you were in the lunch hall, they did have, I remember there being security cameras pointing at us, but there was just like one per lunchroom. And so there was a lot of strategizing over trading food amongst people of things you liked or didn't like. I think you were expected to eat all of it. So there was a lot of trading because there was, lima beans involved, I think sometimes. And ugh. Um, so that would happen. So there was also, you'd have this strategizing of swapping food, but then also gossiping about it. And if we take a step back here, like this is all very boring stuff, right? But when you're isolated in a space with people, like that's the thing that becomes important. I remember there being a lot of people who might exaggerate the truth. And so, we couldn't verify anything with the internet. So of course that guy over there is BFFs with Wesley Snipe. And like, of course your, husband's about to make a pile of money and you're just in here to like, make some vacation money. Maybe that was true. Who knows? But there was just a lot of gossip about other study members and staff members. And I was both a part of it and also fascinated by it. Because again, I'd never experienced this before. There was like things that would happen along the way. I remember there was like another woman who was probably around my age in the study. They found out pretty early on she was pregnant. Not sure how they missed that. She was kicked out. Another woman in my room was like naming all of her children after NASCAR races, Talladega, Daytona. There was an incident wherein a bat got into the facilities in the middle of the night. And there was a lot of like uproar about that. I remember one of the women in her everyday life, study participant, she was an animal handler. And so she wanted to help, but of course they couldn't let her help because what if she was bit by this bat? She, wouldn't be able to continue with the study that was of utmost important to them. So 3 weeks of this day after day mundane situation with little blips of entertainment was both fascinating and boring and all of the things. And so two things came out of this. One, at the end of this, under no uncertain terms, I was like, I need to go to college. I need to go to college. I am going to college. I don't care where I go. And I think it was probably the concern that I would follow some of the path of the other people in the study outweighed the fear of not being accepted. I do remember that like I applied to a school that I was like very sure I could get into in Minnesota versus like, the school I ultimately wanted to go to and the one I did go to, which was UW-Madison. So that came out of it. And also suddenly a newfound love of just the study of humans. And so I promise this gets back around to reality TV. You can probably sense where this is going anyway. But yeah, so I left there just kind of being fascinated, but it was also interesting because it was an experience where I was kind of like, how do I describe this to people? Like even talking about it here on this podcast, I'm like, how do I describe the experience of what that was like to be in that scenario with all of these different people and being observed in that way? And it wasn't until a few years later, I was working abroad. I worked abroad in Galway, Ireland. And it was the first few days of living with my Irish flatmates, and they were all sitting around the TV and they were watching the show Big Brother, which had just, I think, aired, or maybe it was in its second year and I had never seen it before. And I just sat down and I was watching it and I was like, oh my gosh, here's people from like all walks of life trapped in this building with no access to the outside world. And suddenly the smallest things in the world like became the biggest things. And that's what they talked about. And I just in that moment felt like this is it. This is my experience that I had in this study. And I was just fascinated by it. I remember there was like the show came on every single day at the time. And there was just like one week where they were obsessed with like this nail polish bottle that had been spilled that nobody would cop to having spilled it and leaving it there. Um, and just watching that, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is it. Like this is my experience, and I could finally convey to other people like, hey, I did this medical study and it was like this. Like I felt very like seen in that moment by reality TV. And I absolutely like have loved it ever since. I think there was a period of time where I kind of fell off and didn't watch it, but when I was living in San Francisco, one of my roommates at the time got me into watching what was it, like Jersey Shore, and that was also fascinating. Um, in part, I think this is why I studied sociology in college, which is sociology is basically like the study of like human society and how people and groups interact. Also later became a life coach and become, obviously I'm now like fascinated by human brains and human behavior in that way. And I don't know, I have to wonder if this has impacted my life in more ways than I thought, doing this random medical study at an early age. Impacted in terms of there is no weirdness today. I don't think there was any after effects. I might have even had a placebo. They don't release that information to you by doing the study. But I do think having some, that weirdness at a very early age kind of colored everything else that happened beyond there in my choices in life and how that went down. But yeah, I mean, that is probably a long-winded way of telling you why I'm into reality TV. I've loved watching people being trapped in spaces ever since. I sometimes watch the competition show, but I'm much more fascinated by, shows like Survivor and Bachelor and Bachelorette and the shows where people are all in those spaces. So anyway, that is my experience. That's why I like reality TV. It's, changed over the years, but when I had the idea for this podcast of like, oh man, we could like add the life coaching lens to these shows, it just I was all in. I was like, I'm going to do that. That sounds so fun. So, anyway, if you'd like to discuss any of this, what I've shared today on this podcast with me, reach out. If you also have a weird story about how you got into reality TV or why you love it, connect with me. I am on Instagram at Lynn Grogan. You can send me a DM or message me. Email me, lynn@lynngrogan.com. I am always down to chat about things. And yeah, I just thought this was a fun story. So thank you for joining me today. I'll be back next episode. I have Dr. Christina Arnold coming on, and she's going to come back. We're going to resume with the season of Survivor that we have been talking about, and we will forge ahead and wrap up the season probably in about a month's time. So thank you for joining me, and have a great week.